And now, the most reasonable talk show host from Sop-Choppy to the Redneck Riviera, here is Bob Kerrigan.
Good evening and welcome to Within Reason. Bob Kerrigan tonight. Bill Rankin will be with me next week and we'll debate the issues of the day. Obama says that he's going to end the don't ask, don't tell policy. As you will recall, this all occurred or started in the 90s, 92 I think, early on in President Clinton's tenure as president, term as president, first term. And it was a compromise that I think was championed by Colin Powell and others. Don't ask, don't tell for gays and lesbians in the military. ABC poll found that 3/4 of American people supported allowing gays and lesbians to serve openly in the military, compared to only 44% who expressed the same support in 1993 when President Bill Clinton approved the Don't Ask, Don't Tell. I said 92, it was 93. And that's what Colin Powell called a compromise. The current leaders of the military are not saying anything about it because they claim that they follow orders from a civilian government, which is true, and they're going to implement those orders when they are issued. Recently, the main active support for Don't Ask, Don't Tell has come from the nonprofit Center for Military Readiness, whose founder, Elaine Donnelly, and other officers did not respond to requests for comment. She has argued that ending the ban on gays serving openly in the military would devastate unit cohesion and morale by ordering heterosexual troops into forced cohabitation, et cetera, et cetera. We had a decade in the 90s where people came out and people came to know their sisters and their mothers and their colleagues and their children and their friends were gay, said Nathaniel Frank, a senior research fellow with the Palm Center at UC Santa Barbara, which conducts research on sexual minorities in the military. Familiarity breeds tolerance and even acceptance, which was the interesting thing. If you'll remember, Dick Cheney's daughter was a lesbian and publicly advocaate for gay rights. And it started to come out, and people started to talk more and more about it. But the real core of it, for me, was the people that they lost. And see if this article talks about it. They lost a number of really top-flight people in the military. More recent years have seen high-profile discharges of gay Arabic linguists and other troops whose military jobs were deemed essential in Iraq, Afghanistan, and the War on Terror, dismissals that struck many people as inexplicable, said sociologist Melissa Embers-Harbour, author of U.S. Military's Don't Ask, Don't Tell Policy, a reference handbook. We know of gay, lesbian, bisexual veterans who have served in combat theater, and I think that's also a big piece of it, she said. It's much harder to sell to the general public that that person died or lost a leg, didn't deserve to be serving their country. The military has also experienced shifts in attitudes, interestingly enough, according to a number of studies. A 2006 Zogby International poll found military members who had served in Iraq or Afghanistan to be split on the issue, with about a quarter saying gays should be able to serve openly and a bit more than a third saying they should not. But almost a quarter of the respondents said that they knew a gay person already serving in the military, and a large majority of those, about 2/3, said the presence of gay people in their unit made no impact on their personal or their unit's morale. 3/4 said they would have joined the military even if gays were permitted to serve openly. Now back to the tragic, the tragic news that just keeps coming about Guantanamo, and admissions now coming out about what's happened there. This is from statement came from Susan J. Crawford, a senior Bush administration official who oversaw operations at Guantanamo Bay, has just admitted the U.S. military tortured a Saudi detainee during interrogations. The top Bush administration official in charge of deciding whether to bring Guantanamo Bay detainees to trial has concluded that the U.S. military tortured a Saudi national who allegedly planned to participate in the September 11, 2001 attacks, interrogating him with techniques that included sustained isolation, sleep deprivation, nudity, prolonged exposure to cold, leaving him in a life-threatening condition. We tortured this man, said Susan Crawford in her first interview, since being named convening authority of military commissions by Defense Secretary Robert Gates in February 2007. His treatment met the legal definition of torture, and that's why I did not refer the case for prosecution. Now, about torture. Everybody weighs in on the debate because almost everybody has an opinion about it. They want to say, I think the popular sentiment is, it's wrong, but if it was necessary to protect against, for example, catastrophic loss or destruction in this country of some kind from a nuclear weapon or whatever, then of course it would be justified. And it's always presented that way. Torture is always justified because of the fear of imminent harm or danger. It's always justified on that basis because lay people think that when someone's tortured, they tell the truth, and that truth will allow you to take sufficient, appropriate steps to protect yourself. On a given instance, at a given time, it could be true. But over time, by people who have studied it and understand it, the conclusion has been reached that it provides unreliable information, substantially unreliable information, and that it does not serve the purpose of preventing against a catastrophic attack of some time. It just does not. But that's always the basis for it. And so it's kind of a wink and nod. Well, we kept you safe, didn't we? Like, so you did want us to torture us? And as Ann Coulter said, so you want to hold hands and sing Kumbaya? Well, that's not the issue. The issue is, number one, it's illegal. Number two, it's universally recognized as illegal by all civilized countries in the world. And the Bush administration departed from it and literally sat in the White House and discussed methods of torture, at which, as I recall, at least one person present said this is not something that should be discussed in the White House. They decided then, through Rumsfeld and Cheney, that they were going to use torture. And they were going to use it whenever they wanted to use it, and at some point was delegated to people to implement it. The FBI, to their great credit, walked away from it, refused to do it, and internally complained about it, however they do that within the FBI. In the end, this torture business has been so devastating to the reputation of the United States for a system of laws, a protection of individual rights when people are accused. Even when bad, terrible people are accused of a crime, they are still afforded a relative sense of protection against this kind of treatment. And we have no excuse for it. It was just a violation of the law, and there are people who believe that the Bush administration people who engaged in it should be criminally prosecuted. I don't really have an opinion about that. I think Obama's probably right, though, to move on and get this behind us. But the idea that this was okay and that this really protected us, and people want to make that argument, and they want to look out the window and pretend that they don't know about it, I think that's wrong. And I think that we made a terrible mistake there. And I believe that opinion is shared by many people in this country, and that the people who were responsible for it should be held accountable, if nothing else by public disclosure of who these people are, what this discussion was, and how these orders and directives were given. Now we're finding out that particular inmates have been tortured, way beyond the one isolated waterboarding incident that Cheney wanted to admit to. He's already admitted to universal, the application of torture, that they did it. He said quite proudly that they did it. And he always says, in the same sentence, and we kept you safe. We kept you safe. Thank you for watching tonight. This is Within Reason. Bob Kerrigan, your host. This program is rebroadcast several times in a week, Friday night at 10 and Monday night at 10. Be back next Wednesday with Bill Rankin, and have a good weekend and a good week, and we'll see you then.